Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I'm making for Dinnerhe as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we've got ourselves on the screen what I assume to be or understand at least, is to be the most recent release from RAYE. Their album, This Music May Contain Hope. Put that art up on the screen there. I'm going to be checking out Lifeboat today, track number 8 for Dinnerhe. I should note that I've already reviewed another track from RAYE previously titled RAYE Where Is My Husband. So we could check out more. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it, let's go. What do we got?
Don't work too hard, have a rest.
Never give up.
Never give up.
Never.
Not giving up. Yeah, I'm not giving up. Yeah, I'm not giving up. Yeah.
Interesting production so far.
I'm not giving up yet.
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 He sees you.
I'm not giving up yet.
Keep it small, go.
I'm not giving up yet.
Incredibly wholesome, isn't it?
I'm not giving up yet.
Giving up, yeah. I'm not giving up.
I'm not giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet.
Giving up, no, I'm not giving up. Yeah, I'm not giving up. And then cry myself an ocean, trying not to drown in it, trying not to drown in it, trying not to drown in it. Lord, send me a lifeboat, something I could cling to, something I could cling to, something I can hold. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I know I'm not giving up.
I'm not giving up yet.
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 Giving up yet. I'm not giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet.
I am not giving up yet.
I mean, I was kind of half expecting this, but not totally. Musically, I mean.
I'm not giving up yet.
Many people have pains in their lives. They've been so disappointed, so broken, almost lost the desire to even live. Been rejected many times, I've been disappointed many times, I've been failed many times. Whether you're going through darkness, there's a future, there's a way forward, there's hope.
I don't know how I do
We'll
this.
make it.
I'm not giving up.
We will make it.
I'm not giving up.
I'm not giving up yet.
Phenomenal dynamic range.
Don't know how I'll get there. I'm not
Not
giving
giving
up.
up yet.
I'm not giving up.
I'm not giving up yet.
You cried yourself a nose, trying not to drown in it, not to drown in it.
Great use of range.
You might not believe it, but I need you to speak it.
Never give up.
Say it like in the air.
Say again.
I said I'm not giving up yet.
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 He sees
I'm not
you.
giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet. I'm not giving up yet.
This life ain't easy enough,
I'm not giving up yet.
but I'm not giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet. I'm not giving up yet.
Ooh, that's satisfying.
I'm not giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet. I'm not giving up yet.
I'm not giving up yet. And I'm not giving up yet. Neither are you.
And heaven above, I need you to send me a lifeboat.
Great use of vocal fry there. Phenomenal. Phenomenal vocal range there. Phenomenal performance from RAYE on that track.
Don't work too hard.
Clearly not a positive sounding track.
Have Never give up. Never give up.
You know, never give up. We're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named RAYE titled Lifeboat, off of the album This Music May Contain Hope. In this section, I'm going to be providing an overall song analysis of everything through to the lyrics and vocals as well, all the way through to the studio production, should I say, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think this track is effectively simultaneously looking up to the sky for God to send us a lifeboat, but it's also discussing the fact that effectively we are just refusing to give up and, you know, to give in to our trials and tribulations, no matter what disappointments, you know, how many oceans we cry and we try to avoid drowning in it. I think what the strength of this track is that there are so many different voices. I feel like it's such an accessible type of subject matter that people, especially in 2026, with just how ludicrous things are and surreal things are, if we're honest, in a lot of places, you know, around the world, even locally, wherever you are, a lot of people are struggling. And I think that this album is an effective one at this point in time, primarily not just because of the fact that it follows the fundamentals really well, which we'll talk about as we go through this analysis section, but also because I think RAYE really gives a shit. I really think they care about it. I think just the different voicings of the different people, the quietness of some of them, the tenderness, the authenticity of how they're expressed and portrayed and communicated is incredibly effective. But it's also the RAYE with their vocal technique, whether it's the chest voice or their fry or their higher voice there or their vocal tails. That one full legato passage at the end there, that melodic tail at the end there, that flurry was just phenomenal. They can clearly sing, but they understand that it's probably more important in a situation to focus on creating compelling melodies that get stuck in the listener's head, not just because it's effective within pop music, but because they want the person to remember what they're trying to communicate. They share a vulnerability, a fragility that they feel in a way which is believable, but they're also trying to make it interesting and like uplifting in a sense, not just musically, but also through the effort that they're putting, the kind of the grit there, the angst there, the push, the hope, all these things are communicated really well. It's just a really wonderful performance where I feel like the expression suits what's going on there. And I like the call and responses between RAYE and some of the other sort of like quotes and samples as well. I think that's really cool. Maybe they had a lot of people talking to them. Maybe it's conversations they had with other people. They wanted them to sort of talk about their experiences. I'm not sure, but it's just a really interesting piece. But yeah, vocal performance is sensational there. We're the main sort of solo voice for a lot of it. I don't think we necessarily needed to harmonize too much within ourselves. There were presumably some vocal harmonies as we went through. I heard some thirds and fourths and stuff like that. But a lot of what we were doing is more meant to be palatable with what's going on with the various synth, bass, and drum layers. This track at 4 minutes 15 is structured quite neatly. It's not the same intensity the entire time. We have these quieter parts which rise literally with builds, and then we have these sort of drop hook sections, kind of like a more traditional early 2010s EDM piece. And we have that kind of come down after that main sort of luxurious, really lush first drop. Where we come down for more exposition from people who are trying to sort of further, add different angles to their stories, and then we come back up again for just a really effective second one, which just has a bit more kind of oomph to it. Ultimately, it's a song with a phenomenal amount of dynamic range, both compositionally and in terms of the production side of things. It's very pleasant to listen to, in part because of the journey that you go on with RAYE, as they show you all these different angles and take you by the hand through, lifeboat. Yeah, they want to be saved, but they're also knowing that they're going to have to continue to fight until that point. I think having just the voices at the start nice and quietly kind of forces you to listen and gets locked into that specific intensity. At the start of the piece, it can be very kind of ballsy to have things too quiet, because sometimes people will assume that it's not commercial grade mastering, for example. They'll think, oh, it's an issue with the mixing. But if you can make it blunt, kind of like make it sound like it's a phone call or something like that, someone messaging through, and if you can start, making things rise a little bit as you earlier on, so that people get the hint of things growing. For example, if you never heard RAYE before, as opposed to if they're a commercial grade major label artist who's just released a phenomenal album, it's just those things where, like, I think you need to be careful about how you start things, and I just feel having things minimalist at the start was really cool. We have this wah kind of reverse take oscillating synthesizers there at some points, which aren't necessarily melodic or harmonic, but are just trying to establish a sense of flow and a chord note pattern to it. When I said that it was what I was expecting, but kind of not what was I expecting, What I mean is that this is a very different way of sort of approaching a traditional sort of house track. But I dig that like they had all those kind of 1, 2, 4 to the floor inferences, although subtle, just to kind of let you know where it was going. You have the chord note kicks come in, they're filtered, they're not too intense around the 50-second mark there. We're trying to sort of let the listener know, hey, we are going to build up from this. We're kind of gathering our energy together and we're going to culminate something really, really awesome. And as the filter kind of becomes a little bit less aggressive, you get more of that mid to high end there, the music starts to grow in that regard with those synth pads kind of coming in and really sort of decorating the piece on the sides of the stereo field, and just these wonderful kind of either extended or sort of triadal kind of glows are really pretty. You have further synth sequences around the minute 25 mark, which is cascade up and down, provide further points of sort of like performance interest. It's just a different way of interpreting some of the previously instantiated triads. And those sequences continue as we go into that sort of first main hook section there. We have the 808s kind of bouncing on the low end there with a nice push and attack to them, with the cymbals sort of claps and I mean the claps are fairly subtle, but you've got kicks, claps, and almost like you're dancing along to it. And it's just very sort of like, again, lush sounding and full sounding, because you've had all these things which have previously been introduced in parts come together in a way that's quite satisfying. And like at the start of that hook section, the kind of pads explode outwards, and it just, the music sounds bigger because I think we're deliberately placing things within the panning, maybe 50 to 60%. And then the chorus, it just becomes huge. It's really cool to have like more spoken parts, but then also have some of those kind of fantasy pads in the background there. Very almost magical sounding, lets you know, hey, we're not stopping the song at this point. We're going to continue up again, but we just need you to learn a bit more. And I think we do include some additional vocal harmonies with ourselves, maybe fourths or something like that, for a really sort of wonderful glow to the piece around that 3-minute 43 mark. But you've got kind of that traditional house, just kind of, riser, focusing on the highs for a bit of an extra kind of sizzle and sass before with the snare fill there. The drums are fantastic with their quarters, eighths, and 16ths, by the way. Clearly they're sampled kits, but still it's nice to have that kind of adjustment of flow as we go between. It's also nice to not have the drums all the time, as a sometimes thing. And I think as we have more of those kind of those existing pads and sort of sequences, kind of those takes fade us out, with RAYE kind of taking over the voicing for that last little bit, you feel like you've had a kind of really gentle adventure, I suppose. It's more sort of like trance-like than anything else. I think that if you'd had any harsh edges in a track like this, it would have been counterintuitive, so I appreciate how there was nothing there that was too kind of abrasive sounding texturally or tonally. Thematically, the piece kind of stuck more, I think, with the majors and minors. They weren't trying to overcomplicate the harmony there. There are adjustments to some of the additional instrument parts occasionally. They add a bit of sort of like emotional sophistication to it, but I don't think they were trying to make it too sort of like academic. They effectively wanted to follow the fundamentals of traditional EDM kind of house and sort of trance-ish kind of stuff, whilst also putting RAYE's voice in it in a way that was still them and distinct, but also trying to do something different and unique with it, but not being too sort of like alien to the style of music that they're performing over. And I just think it was the additional vocal parts and sort of added sort of like samples and parts that really made it special. But ultimately, yeah, I think that having the same sort of baseline chord progression for a lot of it just kind of made it seem like it was connected, and I think we had enough variety within the different vocal and instrumental sections to not need to have a different baseline and chord progression at any point. I don't think there's any filler, not out of place, nice and tight. Studio recording, mixing and mastering, phenomenal dynamic range on it, difference between quiet and loud notes. I appreciate how much the track was allowed to breathe. I think the mix was sidechained well when the kicks were there. You could hear all the different pads, bass, vocal, sort of drum parts, etc. neatly. There was space allowed for when things were quieter, things weren't too suffocated or choked there from both composition and performance perspective. The vocals are nice and present within the mix. The vocals were commercial grade. I thought the EQ and compression, etc., as well as the stylization on RAYE's voice. It's not like it was like overdone or anything like that, but it's just nice to have that kind of sit in the mix really neatly. And it was also nice to have more of a kind of rustic tone to some of those sort of spoken parts on the phones and stuff like that, or whoever was speaking over it. It was just great to feel like you're going up and down with the song, and for it to not be too like kind of paranoid about being the same loudness or loud enough for people to sort of sit with it. But yeah, nice and loud, but pumping, bus compression, limiting handled. No applicable constructive critique for me. From a general listener's perspective, I kind of get more of a feel of who RAYE is now. I accidentally listened to Finn, the end track, before the rest of the album, because Dinnerhe mentioned it, and I thought it was just, there's so many people involved in this album, and it's just fantastic to hear this kind of team effort. And I hope that everyone who is featured in this video is doing well and has found some sort of peace despite how difficult things are for people at the moment. I firmly believe that if we keep, if we don't give up, things will improve. And I wish everyone involved the best of luck in their future musical and current musical endeavors. But thank you very much for watching my review of this track from an act named RAYE titled Lifeboat off of the This Music May Contain Hope album. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Patrons video. Spiderhands out.